Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality you would expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions of the thing. If you like the show, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Joining me today, we have Logan Wilkinson. How you doing, Logan?
Doing good. Always a pleasure to be on that D+.
Excellent. We spent, a good chunk of time before we actually sat down to record and talked Black Panther Wakanda Forever, which there will be a That D Plus show in, a couple months' time or whenever that comes out, I'm sure. But today we are talking all about Disenchanted. The reason this episode is a day late is because Disenchanted just came out on Friday, November 18th, the day we are now also recording this. I basically, knowing that you kind of were like, hey, can we record Friday night? I was like, I work all day Friday, but I can try and make that happen. So I watched it last night before I went to bed, basically, as I often do, which now that the time has changed means I stayed up until 3 to watch it. Cause it didn't release until 1 a.m. my time, since it all goes off of Pacific time, and now they're an hour behind us. But yeah, we were able to make it work and get this in, only a day late. You watched it basically right before we hopped on to record?
I watched it literally right before we got to
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. If I had tried to do that, we would have definitely had to start late because I would have gotten off work and then it would have been 2 hours to sit down and watch. So also good thing that I can spend.
Also how long this movie is too. We'll get into that, but I was surprised by the way.
Yeah. Nice that I can do a lot of the legwork on the docs for these shows and the research and stuff ahead of time. And then the rest of it, I just finished on my lunch break today. Disenchanted. Why did we pick it? I picked it because I think the original Enchanted movie is great. It is a wonderful deconstruction, especially back from 2007 when it came out, of the Disney princess trope, and the fact that it was done by and with the blessing of Disney, just made it that much more fun and cool. And I when I proposed it, I thought other people had seen the original Enchanted, and only learned today that you and Cameron had not. So it's going to be very interesting getting your perspective, especially because you do not have the context of the original Enchanted.
That's correct.
I do. As I mentioned, this one, Disenchanted, originally released here on November 18th, 2022. And then I want to highlight a little bit, like we did, I think, with Hocus Pocus 2, when we did that a couple months back. The original Enchanted released just about 15 years ago, November 21st, 2007, to give a snapshot of other movies that were out around that time. We had Dan in Real Life and Saw 4, the fourth installment of the Saw franchise, had come out October 26th.
Just to put that in context, Jigsaw dies at the end of Saw 3, and there are still many Saw movies afterwards.
Yeah.
Even though he's dead, and then he's it's a whole thing. Saw's in him, and then they did a soft reboot with Chris Rock a few years ago. It's a mess.
We had B-Movie, that Jerry Seinfeld nightmare show, came out November 2nd. The original Enchanted, as I said, November 21st, alongside the Hitman movie, the first attempt at making Hitman.
Not the Timothy Olyphant one?
Yeah, the Timothy Olyphant one.
Yeah.
We had Juno, if you remember that movie.
Wow, 2007. What a year. You know what I mean? 5th. What a year. It's a great movie.
We had, this is a shout out to Frank, who gave me, I believe, this movie, Alvin and the Chipmunks, or he might have given me the Squeakquel. I don't remember. It was at some point in the Kind of Funny community, we watched that movie in one of the hotel rooms, and I was just this is so terrible, why are we watching this? And Frank gave it to me as a Christmas gift or birthday gift or something. But that came out right alongside I Am Legend, which feels like that was a much older movie than this, I guess. But yeah, that was December 14th. And then movie. A flurry of movies gunning for the holiday box office, the Christmas box office that year. On December 21st, we had Charlie Wilson's War,
Good movie.
National Treasure Book of Secrets, Sweeney Todd,
Good movie.
And Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox Story. Basically, just a whole running the gamut of like, here's
Motion
something for
pictures,
everybody. Yeah. But yes, this one, back to Disenchanted, has a runtime of 2 hours and 1 minute. A few minutes of that is, I mean, like plenty of that is credits and then like the international credits that come out. But that is what is credited as. In the Disney live action timeline of things, we had Pinocchio back on September 8th. Then we had Hocus Pocus 2, September 30th. We had A Quiet October. So we had Disenchanted here, November 18th. Up next, nothing live action, in at least according to Wikipedia, until The Little Mermaid, May 26th, 2023.
Oh, wow.
And then beyond that, the Haunted Mansion reboot.
Right.
August 11th.
That'll give us an excuse to go watch Haunted Mansion again before we.
There you go. We've already done that D Plus show on that
it's
one.
It's a great one.
Yeah. But yes, diving into our roll call here, we have director Adam Shankman, who one of his earliest things was The Wedding Planner, and like I think I've probably like realized this and like made this connection on that D Plus show before, but he also directed A Walk to Remember, which is like a guilty pleasure movie of mine from high school. Then he went on to make The Pacifier, and then he came to the world of musicals with Hairspray and Rock of Ages. And then he did What Men Want a couple years ago.
I have no idea what that was. Some sort of
the gender swapped version of the Mel Gibson What Women Want movie from years ago. I don't remember who was in it. Yeah, Helen Hunt was in What Women Want. I don't remember who was it. Like What Men Want was either like right before the pandemic or like very early in the pandemic.
It sounds like
it
one
also
of those
just kind of like went out to die.
Josh Hartnett movies from like 2001.
Yeah,
is what Men Want sounds like.
Yeah.
For our 30-year-old listeners out there who get that reference.
Yeah. 40 Days and 40 Nights or whatever.
yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
I watched that movie. I watched 40 Days and 40 Night in like a high school English class because it had like Shakespearean themed. They were like embedded in there apparently. And we were like watched 40 Days and 40 Nights and I'll never forget it.
All right. Bridget Hales is our screenplay writer on this one. This is her feature film debut. She had written on the series 11/22/63, which I believe was about a person
JFK?
going back in time to the Kennedy assassination to try and like stop.
It's a
the
Stephen
Kennedy
King novel. I know that.
Okay. And then the thing that is much more in fitting with Disenchanted. She is also a longtime writer and story editor on the series Once Upon a Time.
Jennifer Goodwin.
Yeah. Then we have J. David Stern and David N. Weiss credited as the story. They are a writing duo behind
What a great list of things.
the Rugrats movie and Rugrats
Hell
in
yeah.
Paris, Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius, Shrek 2, Are We There Yet? And then the recent Smurfs movies, The Smurfs and Smurfs 2.
I will say without exaggeration, that is one of the best filmographies I think we've seen in a long time. That's a great run of movies that are all just fun films. I stand by all those, except for at least I haven't seen Smurfs and Smurfs 2, but everything else, Rugrats movie, Rugrats in Paris, Jimmy Neutron, Shrek 2, Are We There Yet? Those are all fun movies. I'll stand by all those.
Yeah, and I don't think I ever watched Are We There Yet? And
It's Ice Cube.
Jimmy Neutron was after my like Nickelodeon days. I think even Rugrats in Paris, I don't think I ever watched. I remember the original Rugrats movie, but yeah, I think
Rugrats in Paris.
of the ones I know there, I was like, I'll give you Shrek 2. The Rugrats movie is probably
the
fine.
best Shrek movie. I think is it Rugrats. One of the Rugrats movies is where Dill Pickle came into the scene. It might have been the first Rugrats movie.
I think that's the first one, and then I think
he
was
Rugrats
a more
in Paris
prominent role in Rugrats in Paris. Yeah,
is also where like Chucky's dad got remarried and he had a sister, I think, as well. Is like the Rugrats in Paris one.
Yeah.
It's been 20 years.
Lastly, on the story side of things here, Richard Lagravenese, who wrote The Bridges of Madison County, the P.S. I Love You, which I only included in this because it was like right around the 2007 window that Enchanted came out in, and I saw it and I was like, what was that movie? And even having looked it up recently, I couldn't tell you what that one was about. I think that was the Gerard Butler one. But yeah,
again, names a lot of movies from like 2006 to like 2011.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of like they really try to push him as a romantic lead.
Behind the Candelabra
Ooh.
was another one that he wrote, and then he wrote the screenplay for the film adaptation of The Last 5 Years, which is one of my favorite little musicals by Jason Robert Brown. Then lastly, for the actual like writing credits of this, Bill Kelly gets a credit because based on the characters created by from the original Enchanted. Apart from Enchanted, he also was the writer for Blast from the Past.
Hell yeah.
Shout out to Alicia Silverstone and Brendan Fraser.
Always shout out Brendan Fraser.
Yeah.
Always.
Especially in his Renaissance. Yeah.
I'm trying to think who like George of the Jungle and like that kind of stuff. Would that be on Disney Plus, you think? I don't know if that's a Disney movie.
George of the Jungle might be. I don't remember.
We should get the Mummy. We should do, if the Mummy's on Disney Plus, we should just talk about the Mummy. The Mummy's great.
The Mummy, so I don't believe the Mummy
probably
is
HBO
Disney
Max,
Plus.
like
I think I watched it recently
Paramount.
on HBO Max. Yeah.
It's that first Mummy movie is so good.
It's George of the Jungle was Walt Disney Pictures. I don't know if it's on Disney Plus, but theoretically it should be.
It's a fun movie.
Yeah. Did you see in the like circle of like interviews and stuff he's been doing recently for The Whale and all the award show buzz that he's been doing? He was accepting some award in San Francisco and basically like apologized for George of the Jungle because specifically of a stunt during that movie that had George out there or had George on the Golden Gate Bridge and like a paraglider like stunt or like a parachutist or something, and basically like people didn't realize it was a stunt for a movie and people thought like traffic stopped and San Francisco came to a halt because they thought like stuff had really gone down, and he was out here saying like, hey, I just wanted to apologize for that for all those years ago. Sorry, my bad. It's like, oh, Brendan Fraser.
That's really good. We love Brendan Fraser.
I'm so glad you're getting this renaissance right now.
Yes.
These were a couple late minute additions, but I wanted to highlight them here because music is such a prominent part of this film. The music and lyrics here are by the famous and popular duo Alan Menken and Stephen Schwartz. Alan Menken did the music. He is one of 17 EGOT winners, including 8 Oscars. 2 each for The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and Pocahontas, all of course with Disney. He also wrote a number of other Disney scores, including the music for the original Enchanted, right alongside Stephen Schwartz, who wrote the lyrics. He is the writer and composer of musicals like Godspell, Pippin, and most famously Wicked. He was also the writer for the music of Pocahontas, Hunchback of Notre Dame, alongside Menken, The Prince of Egypt, and the original Enchanted.
Prince of Egypt, yeah, that's a deep cut.
Yeah. Starring, we have Amy Adams here as Giselle. She's, of course, in the first Enchanted. She's also in movies like The Fighter, American Hustle, Arrival, and she recently was Lois Lane in the Snyderverse DC films. We have Patrick Dempsey as Robert, who back when the original came out was, high on the McDreamy
Deep in the
phase.
McDreamy, yeah, I was going to say.
It was only like two-ish years into McDreamy on Grey's Anatomy. So this was kind of like his jump into film. Then he went on into, apart from Enchanted, his filmography, not too crazy, but he was in Transformers Dark of the Moon.
I had no idea that was true. That you could have easily made that up and I'd been like, all right, sure, I guess.
I will admit, like, IMDb could have made that up. I've not actually seen right. The only Transformers I've ever seen was the first one and then Bumblebee. So yeah, I did not see Dark of the Moon. We have Maya Rudolph as Malavina, of course, known from SNL for many, many years. Then she went on to be in Bridesmaids, the way back, Big Hero 6, and recently Luca, which we did That D Plus show not too long ago. I
already forgot who she's in Luca.
She's Luca's mom.
Thank you. I was like, it's gotta be, had to have been that. Yeah.
Yeah, alongside Jim Gaffigan as Luca's dad.
That's right. Jim Gaffigan's great.
Yeah. Gabriella Ballacino is playing Morgan. She's been in the film Ask for Jane, as well as an episode of The Conners, but this is probably her biggest thing to date.
I was gonna ask, is it so? It seems like it's not the same.
It is not.
Actress. Okay.
I have some trivia later. The original actress was I'll just throw that trivia in here. The original actress was Rachel Covey, who played Morgan in the first movie. In the first movie, Morgan was like 6 years old. So
Right.
she is. Given that they only decided to set this like 10 years later,
10 years
she's
later.
effectively like aged out of the role. But she does have a cameo in the film as a Monrolesia girl, which I believe makes her. You'd have to go back and like watch the scene, and somebody would have to verify this. But I'm pretty sure there's like a very prominent Monrolesia girl in the song that Morgan sings, like in the town when she's doing her kind of I Want song. That's kind of like always being judgy of her. I'm pretty sure that was the original Morgan.
That's cute. That's a clever way to do it too. Like that. Like look at this one who took my spot.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yes. James Marsden returns as Edward.
Ooh, we love James.
Of course, as Cyclops in the X-Men movies. Superman returns, the original Enchanted. He also worked with Adam Shankman in the Hairspray musical film as Corny Collins. He's in the series Westworld, and of course, recently the Sonic movies.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Idina Menzel reprising her role as Nancy, of course, probably best known to Broadway people from Rent and Wicked. But she was also in the original Enchanted. Notoriously had a like you take a Broadway actress like that, don't give her a song in the original film. She had one, but it was cut, so it's in like the deleted scenes. But here they rectified that in this one by giving her a couple of big 11 o'clock numbers. And of course, she has gone into superstardom status for her work as Elsa in the Frozen series. Then just some shout outs here. Yvette Nicole Brown as Rosaline. Shout out to her and all the great stuff she did on Community. And shout out to Community getting a movie that has been announced. They finally are getting their six seasons in a movie. The promised movie is finally here. And then Jayma Mays as Ruby. Who probably best known to audiences from Glee as the
I just kept yelling Glee whenever I saw her. Like, she Glee, yeah.
I always before Glee even came out, I was a big fan of like the first season of Heroes, and she was a recurring character in that for a while. I think she gets killed off, but yeah. So then it was nice to see her pop up in Glee, and then Glee just absolutely tanked and sucked. So like, whoops. Colton Stewart plays Tyson. He's an on the rise star. Most recently, he was in Sneakerella for Disney Plus. Oscar Nunez as Edgar, of course. Also Oscar in The Office. Alan Tudyk continuing his just run through of being a voice in pretty much anything Disney does these days. He is the voice of the Skrull. And I watched not too long ago A Knight's Tale. I always loved him from that, as well as Firefly, Dodgeball, iRobot, and a ton of other stuff, including K2SO in Rogue One and Clayface and the Joker in the Harley Quinn series. And then lastly, Griffin Newman as Pip. He was Arthur. He was Arthur in the 2016 version of The Tick. Diving into the trivia, I wrote in here, not a ton to pull from since the movie just dropped today. And then I not only did I just pull a lot of this stuff myself, but I did find a couple things elsewhere. As I touched on, Rachel Covey played Morgan in the first movie, does have a cameo in here as Monrolesia Girl. Similarly, one of the movers at the beginning of the movie is played by an actor, Matt Servito, who plays Artie in the original Enchanted. You don't have context for who Artie is, but basically in the original Enchanted, I'll just kind of throw this out to you. When people come into the real world from Andalasia, they come shooting through a sewer in New York City. And Artie is basically like the head foreman who's working at that sewer. And I recognized it when I watched it because I started to rewatch the original Enchanted basically like while I was waiting for Disenchanted to come on last night, and so when the mover came on, I was like, that looks like the same guy, and sure enough, it was.
It is.
The trio of commuters turned Andalasian chorus.
I knew one right
Monrolasian
away.
chorus members. Which one did you know?
I knew Baker. I knew the genie from Aladdin right away.
Yep.
He's also in the Lion King too, I think.
Possibly. Yes, they are Broadway performers. James Monroe Inglehart as the baker won the Tony Award for playing Genie in the Broadway version of Aladdin, as Logan pointed out there. Michael McCory Rose is the sign painter who has appeared in A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder, as well as Wicked and the first national tour of Anastasia, which means I probably saw him when Anastasia came through Phoenix, and I went and saw that musical. And then Anne Harada as the florist. Her breakout role was as Christmas Eve back in the original Avenue Q cast, and she's continued to do a whole bunch of stuff since then. I recently saw her in Schmigadoon on Apple Plus, fun little send up of musicals as well. She is currently Jack's mother in the Into the Woods revival on Broadway that features like Sarah Bareilles and a handful of other. Like it's basically like an all-star Broadway cast doing Into the Woods out there. And lastly, cameo-wise, Adam Shankman cameos as the Grumpy Vendor, as well as the voices of Kip and Skip, Pip's kids. And then a handful of other references and Easter eggs. I'm sure there are many more throughout the film, but these are some of the ones I caught. During Morgan's song, water splashes behind her at one point as a very clear homage to Ariel singing When the Waves Crash Behind Her as during Part of Your World. In Monrolasia, there are shops in the village square, including Smee's Cheese, Mary Popover's Bakery, Beauty and the Book, A Whole Food World, Lumiere's Candleworks, and Bibbidi Bobbidi Butchers.
Yes. I just wanted to say, because I double checked, he's not in Lion King, but he was on another very successful Broadway play called Hamilton, where he played Lafayette and Jefferson for 4 years.
He took over after David Diggs. Giselle's minions are inspired very clearly by the Sleeping Beauty fairies Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather, the red, green, and blue fairies. Pip turning into a cat is obviously highlighted as a trope of villains, but is most directly a reference to the stepmother's cat Lucifer from Cinderella. Similarly, the ball dresses that Rosaline and Ruby wear are effectively the stepsisters' dresses from Cinderella. The villain song that Giselle and Malvina sing features the line, "Nobody ever would bother to tell a tale of Maleficent and with Maleficent and with Cruella." Obviously, Maleficent and Cruella have, of course, both been featured in their own standalone films at this point from Disney. Additionally, in that song, Malvina peruses her weapons, thinking what she's going to use against Giselle. And you can see weapons such as a spinning wheel, glass-covered rose, poisonous apple, and a drink me vial, nods to Sleeping Beauty, Beauty and the Beast, Snow White, and Alice in Wonderland, respectively. And I'm sure there are a ton of other things. There were definitely things in there where I was like, oh, it's kind of like the Queen of Hearts in Alice in Wonderland. Obviously, like the magic mirror, like that's overt enough. I didn't need to feel the need to call that one out. But yeah, there was also like vibes of like Be Prepared from The Lion King in some of the stuff that they were doing. So yeah, I'm sure there are many, many more. I'm sure people who, make a living making Easter egg videos will find plenty more to draw from there. But yeah, that's it for the trivia. So tell me, Logan, I'm very curious about your thoughts on this because you have not seen the original. What did you think of Disenchanted?
I like Disenchanted. I think it's very cute. As I said before we started recording, I liked it and am curious to watch the original Disenchanted, original Enchanted, because I think I'll like it even more. We're going full into spoilers at this point. I think the idea of having essentially the main character and protagonist is like Snow White figure that Giselle is, because without even seeing the first movie, I saw enough trailers and clips not enough to know that she's basically like a Bambi in the real world kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the idea of like having her become the evil stepmother and like sort of the co-villain of the movies in some ways is really interesting, because the movie very clearly starts as her as like the protagonist and then sort of slowly inverts that and like shifts to having her daughter become the like co-protagonist kind of thing. I don't think they pulled off 100% successfully at times. There are some things I have qualms about. I actually could have done without most of the Maya Rudolph like plotline. Like I think them having two villains didn't necessarily work for me, which is also a refrain I said a lot on that Bond show, so it's not something new. I think it's hard to do two villains well. It's also a reason why there aren't two villains in a lot of Disney movies. But having said that,
they kind of write a whole song about why there shouldn't be two villains in this movie.
Having said that, one of easily the best scenes in the entire film is when the two of them do just play evil off each other, and it's just utterly like they're just so clearly having a great time hamming it up and being cartoon villains that you can't help but smile at that. And I think Amy Adams in particular, she doesn't get to be the bad guy in a lot of things she's in. And I think she had to have some fun there. James Marsden, I could literally watch in anything. I could watch him do anything. I've loved James Marsden for, I think actually literally 20 plus years at this point now, since the first X movie, all the way through Sonic and this now. He is just a person who is just innately charming, I think. Like he just has so much fun, and it feels like he's down for anything. If it's like, running around in circles, fighting kids with plastic swords, hanging out with a blue hedgehog, or anything in between. Like he just seems like he's always down to have a great time. He's like one of the few members from the original X-Men who like didn't hate most of the experience, and like it's just he's just a great dude. And then Patrick Dempsey is just endlessly beautiful to look at always. All we can aspire to is look, a fifth as handsome as Patrick Dempsey when we are in our mid 50s. But yeah, so I think it just has a ton of charm to it, right? It is that kind of movie. It is like, I think the line I used when I was watching it was just like, this is like Disneyland or Disney World, like in real life. Like it is just like this colorful, fun explosion of like just people dancing and singing, and it is what I would imagine that place to be if it was just, it's even more real than it is, I guess, in Disney World's case. But like, yeah, it is a very sweet movie. I think the first one is probably a tighter story. I think the first one is probably a better story, just from watching this one alone and knowing I know the first one. But I still like what they do with the subversion of tropes here and character tropes, and I like the idea of like her making the wish to like make her life like a fairy tale. To the movie's credit, I did not expect it to go the way it did and have her be the evil stepmother. I thought that was really clever, and that is, I think, the thing that I like the most of the movie is like that is such a cool inversion on like making a wish come true, and in a way that most of the audience wouldn't expect. So I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it.
Turns out that wishing wand is a cursed monkey's paw kind of wish maker.
I will say this, like when it first happened, I was like, I didn't have like an idea of what was going to happen. If to be like, that's a monkey paw wish, but like at the end of the movie, it didn't happen. But when she was like, I think Morgan was like, I wish I could be back in with my mom. I was like, that's a monkey paw wish. You left so much ambiguity in that wish for them to just totally screw you over with. That was a terrible wish. But luckily, everything back then was like, man, I've seen enough, 8th grade short stories. That was a terrible wish, man. You're going to get cursed on that thing. But yeah, they got away with that one.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you liked it. I think you will like the first one even better because I think the first one is a tighter story. It'll be interesting going and watching it now 15 years later, because I feel like a lot of the things that kind of like it pokes fun at in tropes have also just become like the things that everybody else pokes fun at and tropes and stuff as well. Like the deconstruction of the princess is kind of just commonplace at this point. But I think there's still like some joy and some fun there. I think the music in the first one is just I as I went to bed last night, I was like, I couldn't remember really, like I didn't find myself humming any of the songs from this one, and it
Easily the
would probably
most
take a
memorable
few
one
songs.
is the like evil off
Yeah,
number. That's easily the one that's most memorable to me.
yeah. I think that one and the one that Adina Menzel sings. That another reference, I guess, was a very flagrant reference is in the big 11 o'clock number that Adina Menzel has. She has like a line that is basically like let it grow," just directly giving her another "let it go" moment. Um, I think those are the two that they really put their efforts behind. And so
Mhm.
yeah, I think there's just a lot, like the song in the first one just seemed like innately more hummable and catchy,
Mhm.
and were more memorable. And I don't know if that's because I've seen the first movie so much more, and
Right.
so some of them are ingrained in my mind that much more. But yeah,
We've had
it
24 hours for this to be on our mind. Not
exactly.
even right now.
But yeah, it like none of the songs in this one really like jumped out to me as like, oh,
Yeah.
that's like clever or smart. Except maybe like performance wise, yeah, the villain off one is a
Oof.
lot of fun,
So good.
and I think so much of the fun in that one is also in how it's shot. And that
Yeah.
like they're both just like they start together obviously, but then they just go off and do their own journeys. But they're basically doing the same choreography, and you're just kind of like cutting the frame between the two
Mhm.
throughout. Um, so yeah, lots of fun there. And I think so much of the fun in this one is Amy Adams like getting to really chew the scenery and be the like
Yeah.
wicked stepmother. And I like that you didn't know that that's where the movie was going, because they gave that away in the first trailers for the movie.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
they basically were like, "Oh, I
Oh,
made
that's
a wish. Oh,
crazy to
she's
me.
turning into the wicked stepmother," which didn't like. I went into Disenchanted excited to see how that plays out, because even from those trailers, I was like, "That's a really cool idea. I really like the Snow White character now becoming the evil stepmother character,
Right.
and like now they can play with the deconstruction of those tropes, kind of thing, a little bit." Um, so yeah, I enjoyed that stuff. Like I think also you'll get in the first movie, you just get a tighter story overall. Whereas like
Yeah, that I believe.
I definitely found myself in this one being like, they just sent Patrick Dempsey to be off in his own other movie for half this thing.
Yeah.
He's just off fighting dragons and giant trolls or whatever, and helping other townspeople, completely separate from everybody else. Like,
Yeah, they had
did
nothing to do for that character. They were just
yeah,
like, yeah, go.
yeah. Um, but yeah, I like like I like the movie starts with like tension between the mother and the daughter characters. But like there's still love there between them, and it's not until they have like a blow up, fight kind of thing, that like it become you get the "you're not even my mother" kind of thing. Um, but yeah, and then I also agree, like this has criminally too little James Marsden,
Mm,
and I
mm.
found myself especially thinking that until the final scene where where they are all at the barbecue or whatever, and he's out there like slashing
Playing with the kids.
at
It's
kids
so
and stuff
good.
like that. Because yeah, like from like everything he does in that final scene is like, no notes.
Love him and Patrick Dempsey together. Love the two
Yeah,
of them together. That's such great awkward chemistry. It's
yeah.
so good.
Yeah, and it's like so much of that like is a continuation, and fun continuation from the first movie as well. So so yeah, I think you will enjoy all of that. Yeah, like ultimately, like I had a very good time with this.
Hmm.
I found myself thinking like it's, and I know like or a large part of it is like goes back to when this was announced. It was basically like, hey, we're making Disenchanted, and it's going to be like exclusively on Disney Plus. And I'm like, oh, that robbed, like this movie could have probably done fine in the theaters. Well, it might not have
Hmm.
made like $100 million or something like that, but like especially this time of year, as soon as the Black Panther, box office draw dies down, like
Right.
this could have been just a good, fun family movie to carry through the holidays, and would have probably just continued to perform really well, especially if people find like some of the songs catchier and stuff. Like it could have been this year's Encanto, effectively, of like, oh, everybody's like the villain song, you know, very much could be like the "We Don't Care About Bruno" of this year, effectively. But yeah, I enjoyed a lot of that. I enjoyed that like they kind of give a wink and a nod to like realizing, we know that between the last movie and this one, we're well aware that Idina Menzel did Frozen and Frozen 2, so of course we're going to give her the big musical number, and make her more prominent in this movie. Yeah.
Anna had done, I don't know if she'd even done Wicked in 2007 yet. That'd have been like right around that time.
No, she I think she was.
I'm on it.
Still in Wicked. Like I think she had still done Wicked, because I saw Wicked in 2005, and she'd already moved on from Wicked. Because my sister and I went when she graduated high school. So yeah, like Wicked was well in the rearview mirror by that point. But like Rent, they had just done the movie for Rent a couple years before this. 20 years after it had been in on Broadway and stuff, or 10 years after it had been on Broadway. But yeah, I mean, like she was definitely most known at the time for Broadway stuff. And so her being in Enchanted was like, oh, that's cool. Weird that you didn't have her, like weird that you put her in a movie musical and didn't have her sing anything, but they clearly made up for it in this one. I'm of two minds. Like I kind of agree with you in that like the evil queen thing didn't do a ton for me. It was fun that they got to play with some of the tropes there, and especially with like her minions of Yvette Nicole Brown and Jama Mays. Like it's always fun seeing them. So I was like perfectly fine whenever they were having banter with one another. And Maya Rudolph is great, so like performance wise I was happy anytime they were on there like chewing the scenery like they did for so much of this, because it's fun and entertaining. But yeah, like the writing was not the strongest part of those sequences, I think. But yeah, like and then I guess like ultimately I love the idea of, well, happily ever after isn't really a thing that exists in our world. Like, and like, it's a convenient thing in stories that like, and they lived happily ever after. It's like, okay, but did they? And so I like that this is kind of examining that of like, okay, like they had a very fairy tale ending of the first movie, but what does life look like 10 years removed in, now that you've got a teenager and a kid of your own who, like, I'll say that as well as like, I don't know what having another baby or I don't know what having a kid in Sophia or whatever added to this movie at all. It felt like that was just a complete, like, that's a thing that happened. And it's realistic, but like, it was one of those things that was a surprise to me coming in, because I don't remember seeing anything about that in the trailer. So I was like, oh, is that going to be a bigger thing? Like, is this kid going to be like, kidnapped or something like that, and it's going to become a let's save the baby kind of thing? Nope, nothing like that. It's just baby's going to be kind of forgotten about for most of the movie.
Right. To me, it's weird that it's a baby, right? Like also A, because they waited 10 years to have a kid apparently, but B, because I mean, I'd have expected it to be like their own child is like a precocious 5 or 6 year old, a lot like Morgan in the first movie kind of thing. And I was like, that sort of like dynamic and interplay, and like there's more of a like jealousy, because they hint at that a little bit with like Morgan and like I didn't get a wand kind of thing, and then like they don't really ever go back to that again, and it's like, oh, okay, we're not going to explore the dynamic that much, I guess. But like that is what I would have thought would have been like a more interesting avenue, instead of just having like, here's a prop baby to just have the movie to not do anything with, essentially.
Yeah, one of the things I would be curious about, because the movie has been in development since like 2010,
right?
So I wonder if there was a point 3 versions of this movie ago that was the more stereotypical, like, hey, we're bringing a new baby into the family, and now Morgan is going to get less love, and all of the attention is going to fall on the baby. And there's going to be some kind of dynamic there. And so yeah, it kind of felt like it was like a holdover from an old version of the script or something like
Script,
that.
right?
But yeah, so it was just kind of like that's a weird choice for to be in this movie. Trying to think any other, like, also I'll say, like, I liked the meet cute of Morgan
Yes,
and the boy
100%.
early on, and then like it just kind of turned into nothing. Like he became like a stereotypical, like, handsome prince-ish kind of guy in the Monroe-Lasia, and I feel like they didn't really give him anything else to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was kind of like that felt like like that also feels like in a previous version that was a more fleshed out relationship, and instead they've really focused on the mother-daughter dynamic and just kind of
It's
went from
interesting.
there.
There is like four different stories happening in this thing at least, and like really only like one and a half of them get enough water and attention.
Mm-hmm.
But like you have talked about, like Patrick Dempsey is just off doing other shit for like this whole movie. The stuff of like Morgan and I think it's Tristan, like nothing really happens there. Like at first I was like,
Tyson.
thank you. At first I was like not sure if it was gonna be like a thing of like he starts good but is actually bad because his mom is bad, and they don't go that way, they just have him be good but don't be interesting. And then like there is this whole element of like not sure what my like, because like before the wish happens, I essentially was like, oh, this is like a WandaVision situation, right? Where like I thought the whole, like, because they kind of hint at like Maya Rudolph's character actually like being a queen, right? And like I was like, oh, like she's a queen. She like built this town somehow, is like evil from, a magic world kind of thing, whatever. And like I thought that was the route we were gonna go. And then when it's like I made a wish and now she is evil, that was like, oh, that's interesting. That she's not like actually necessarily bad. She just was like fit this part. But then once they started having Amy Adams be bad too, it was like, oh, then I'm not sure necessarily what this role is for. But like there's a lot of moving parts, and that's why, yeah, I do wonder if when I get to the first one being like, oh, this is a much tighter story with like less, it is just like this is a, subversion of Disney princess and Disney story tropes, and less like we're doing four different things. Okay.
Yeah.
The mother-daughter stuff, though, I think I will go back to again and again and again. I just think is so interesting, right? Like I just think it's such a cool subversion of that character, right? For like Snow White to become the evil stepmother, and like what that does, and like be like cognizant of that fact as it's happening, but be like powerless to stop that, I think is really interesting. And I think, the like daughter who you love to become like the evil, or not the evil stepdaughter, the like, unloved stepdaughter. I just think that was such a cool idea. And like so much of, I think of like what I like the movie is like laid bare there. And like, it also like allows like some of the sadder moments to like, for me, like a moment that just sort of like happens and then they just kind of run past it. But is like in this fairy tale world, Morgan's bedroom is like this dilapidated like attic thing. And it's like, oh, that's really sad actually, that like she's just like is just an unloved stepdaughter here. Like it isn't like a magic fairy tale in the way that she meant for it to be. And so like I like they have like even that moment, like it really is just like even before she started turning evil, she already was sort of the evil stepmother trope, clearly, because she already had her living in the attic and like this rundown thing. And then the other thing I would say for things that I thought were really cool is that I already forgot his name because it doesn't really matter, but like the little like chipmunk squirrel character who slowly becomes an evil fat cat, aces, absolute aces, great.
Yeah, Pip. Yeah,
all about him.
Pip, fun character carryover from the first one. Different voice actor this time around. I didn't I don't remember who played him in the first one, but oh yeah, it was a different person this time around. But it's like still very much like the same kind of, like he very much leans into like a New York, trope of New York accent for a chipmunk. One of the things I loved, just in terms of like performance wise, I think Amy Adams kills it in this, especially
Yeah,
when she gets
it's
to
just
have
Amy
fun.
Adams, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously, but like like you said, like we don't get to see Amy Adams be bad as much. So like,
Right.
especially when she has those scenes that are kind of like her Smeagol Gollum scenes, and
Mm-hmm.
like the
Yep.
camera
I'm
like
glad you talked about this.
moves
Right.
behind the head of the other person, and like you see just in camera she's like switching
Yeah.
between the one and the other. uh like a joy to see that,
Yeah.
and done so well. And yeah, like anytime she had kind of just that like, very flighty, like lovey naive thing into like a stinger of like sultry stepmother, evil stepmother, it was like, good for you, Amy Adams, good for you getting to
Mm-hmm.
have some fun with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, she easily the standout for me, and she's great in the first one too, of course. But just getting to play more of it this time around, like especially like the little bits of holdover that we have of her, like kind of like very flighty, naive character at the beginning of like, I don't understand what sarcasm is. By like like I love that they set that up, and then she's like, oh, sarcasm is nice, like when she's using it as the stepmother. Lots of fun there. um uh I don't remember the song at all, but I remember like enjoying the visual of like the when the wish first comes true, and you get like the be my guest kind of like with like the
Mm,
smoothie maker and the waffle
right.
maker and stuff like that, like the modern appliances doing a be my guest thing. That was a fun little sequence, even if I don't remember the song at all. um but yeah, a very fun time. I do like it certainly doesn't reach the heights of the first one. And I think there's also an element of the first one. Susan Sarandon basically like is the big bad in the first one, and
Mm,
absolutely crushes it. I don't think it's that Maya Rudolph like couldn't meet that energy. I just don't think she was given enough to do
right. That's the
to
issue. Yeah.
meet that, like the over the topness of Susan Sarandon in the first one.
She
um
basically gets out bad guy by the hero of the movie.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, lots of fun. Any final favorite moments or scenes or anything you want to give a shout out to there before we wrap up?
Um, I will say that having never seen the first one, and I probably knew this, but like I just hadn't thought about it. Like I'm sure I had seen it in trailers at the time. I had not realized that the like magic world was a cartoon.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so when that happened, like again, like I'm sure at the time I knew this because it was in trailers, but like when I watched it now, I was like, oh shit, like it's a cartoon world. I thought that was a really cool surprise for me, really. I was like, oh, that's really neat. That's a really cool idea. That's something that I really like about like that. And again, it's another reason why like I'm excited to watch the first movie where like I'm sure that is like a more prevalent thing that they like have fun with. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I thought that was a really cool, like fun twist for me.
Yeah, there's also another Timothy Spall plays a character in the first one.
Wormtail.
Yeah, who's a lot of fun. That like is also like not noticeably absent, because it's very easy that he could have just gone on and done his own like story in this one. But it like, especially watching the two back to back as it was like, oh yeah, like he's another, like he's really fun in the first one, and so you kind of like miss him a little bit in this one,
Mm.
especially because he has like actually a pretty decent arc in the first one too. um but yeah, yeah, I like I had a lot of fun with this, and it'll definitely be like a fun thing to like come back and revisit occasionally, and just be
Definitely.
like, in the same way that like I remember when Enchanted finally came to Disney Plus not too long ago. It was like, oh, I haven't watched Enchanted in so long, even though I have it on DVD and stuff too. But it was such a joy to like go back and revisit and just like enjoy, especially because
Watch, yeah.
the first one is a lot more subtle with its like Easter eggs and references and stuff, but it's still like
Mhm.
it is also a love letter to Disney, including like, a lot of the like the background or bit characters in that one are just former Disney princesses and stuff like that. Like Jodie Benson's
I
in
love
there, I
that.
think. And there's lots of just like little nods or things like that, that are just fun little like it's one that is fun. Like you won't necessarily pick up on a lot of those Easter eggs, but then if you do like a look at the IMDb trivia of it and be like, oh,
You'll be
that's
like,
really
"That's
cool that it
awesome."
was
Right, yeah.
that was this person or something like that, is some cool fun stuff. But yeah. So shout out to Enchanted. Let's go ahead and grade it. A+ to F. What do you want to give Disenchanted here, Logan?
I'll give Disenchanted a B-. I think.
Okay.
B-. I'm super happy with this. I think I haven't come in with virtually no expectations. Right. I sort of had no point of. I was like, I know it's like a satirical Disney movie essentially, and not having seen the first one. I'm very happy with this, right? Maybe if I had seen the first one, I would have had higher expectations because it could have been a Hocus Pocus 2 situation for you, right? Where you came into Hocus Pocus 2 and it's like, I've seen the first one. I don't really have any expectations. I don't have any sort of like strong attachment to it. And me and Cameron obviously love the first Hocus Pocus movie. I'd have felt different, but having not seen the first one, I thought this is, I think it's really fun. Like I just couldn't kind of stop smiling while watching it. Like it's goofy, it is silly, it is kind of dumb, but like that's a Disney movie, and like that is sort of the thing. Like this is not The Lion King, but it is probably I don't know what's a B tier Disney movie, like Pocahontas or something like that. People might get mad at me for my Disney takes, I guess, but like it's that sort of Disney movie to me, right? And like I think that is a ton of fun. And so, or like Sleeping Beauty, it's a B tier Disney movie. And so like I had a lot of fun with it. I was very pleasantly surprised by Disenchanted.
Yeah. Yeah, I think B- is a good spot for it. Especially like, if we ever do an Enchanted episode,
I would love to.
That's probably like an easy A for me. So yeah, we can certainly go and watch the original Enchanted sometime for that D+ show in the future. And yeah, this one, like, it doesn't reach the highs of the original, but I still had a fun time with it.
Ton of fun with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Good time. Extra credit, other suggestions if you like this. Of course, there is the original Enchanted. You also have the live action Into the Woods film. I say live action as if there's an animated Into the Woods film. There isn't. I'm just saying the Into the Woods film rather than like the Broadway version of it, I guess. Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella, the live action Aladdin, live action Beauty and the Beast, and then 3 that I've never heard of until taking these notes. Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children.
That one's got Eva Green in it, so I know of that one.
Okay. I thought that looked like Eva Green in the thumbnail, but I was like,
yeah, it is.
When was she in something for Disney?
I never forget Vesper Lind. Don't worry.
There you go. And I actually have heard this one, but it's not one I ever saw. The Nutcracker and the Four Realms.
I've never heard that before my whole life.
It's the Nutcracker, and it's Disney doing the Nutcracker. And like I think it only came out like a year or 2 ago, but I think it was like one of those that like came out and was just kind of like brushed under the rug,
left to die, right?
And then lastly, Intertwined. Other than that, extracurriculars. You watch anything else on Disney Plus there, Logan? You keeping up with Andor, and
then Tales of the Jedi. I'm trying to think when we last.
Okay. Yeah.
We watched Tales of the Jedi. We did a podcast about that on D Plus. Go watch it.
Yeah.
It is pretty good. I think we give it a B-. I think we pretty much agreed on for Tales of the Jedi. Something like that.
Yeah, I think
we
with
gave
that
it
one
in the B range.
Yeah, it was in the B range.
I think
because I think we were very much like in the like the Count Dooku stuff is like an A, and the Ahsoka stuff is like a C, and so it's throw that.
I would told it. Go watch that. You know what? You should watch Tales of the Jedi, and then when you get to watching that, be like, it's really good. What's the anime Star Wars stuff called again, Trevor?
Visions.
Thank you. Go watch Visions. Actually, maybe just watch Visions instead. Visions is great.
Star Wars Visions, yeah.
It's so cool. I should watch Visions again. Maybe that's what I'll do. I'll just watch Visions again.
There you go.
Those are also short, quick things.
Indeed. Yeah, I mean, you could watch all 9 episodes in less time than for Disenchanted. Yeah.
Ooh,
I in addition to Andor, I mentioned this in our Slack. When this week's episode of Andor came out, I also stayed up for a little bit more and started to watch the first hour of the Santa Clauses because they had like first 2 episodes of that
Right.
6 episode run come out, and I got 20 minutes into it, and Tim Allen starts making jokes about like,
Trevor is out.
apparently you can't say Merry Christmas anymore, and then they went on to a tangent about like this elf basically being like, well, we actually don't use the word naughty anymore. Now it's the like the maladjusted, so like it's not maladjusted, but basically like they came up with another word, another term for the naughty list, and it's basically just Tim Allen and obviously like Disney signed off on this, so whatever it is, but like basically them just being like, look at how woke the world is today. And it's like, okay, like even if I like align with that mentality, at least throw like a joke in here, because I've been watching this thing for 20 minutes and have not laughed once at that movie. At this show, it is disappointing, and basically like got to that point. I was like, all right, this show just isn't going to be for me. I don't have any interest in supporting the rest of it. So we talked about considering doing it for that D+ show, and I was
December.
like, nah, screw that. We'll just do the Santa Claus 3 to wrap up the original trilogy and just let the Santa Clauses be done.
It's interesting because I don't know really anything about your Tim Allen history. I mean, we don't talk about Tim Allen that much, go figure, in 2022, but I really loved Tim Allen growing up in that. I mean, like, obviously Home Improvement was a big deal, right? Yeah. That's the thing. And then he had that, and then he also had Santa Claus, and then also Toy Story. Like, Tim Allen was a huge deal in the 90s as we were both growing up, obviously. And I really loved Home Improvement. That's one of my favorite like 90s sitcoms of that era, right? Come on, JTT. And then the Santa Claus is one of my favorite Christmas movies. Like, I think it's just like such a smart, clever movie. And so like it's been such a bummer the last like 15 years maybe, like Tim Allen just been like, what if I like just make my brand kind of being a smug asshole?
Yeah.
And it's like, but like,
which is what his brand was back then too, but now he went more diehard into the MAGA stuff.
Yeah, but like even then, like it was less like a smug asshole. It felt like more like a like sort of like winking asshole, right? Like it almost is like, you know, like there were shades of like Harrison Ford there, right? Of like, yeah, like I'm just like kind of a gruff like curmudgeon, but like I got a heart of gold kind of thing. And now it's just more like, no, like I'm just an asshole, right? Like he's got what's his show, like Last Man Standing.
Yeah.
And like that's like the whole, it's just like, like, come on. It's such a bummer. But like, you know, people are out to like ruin their reputation sometimes. Shout out to Elon Musk. He could have just been like a weird rocket scientist dude. And he's like, what if I just like destroy the internet in like a month? What if I just speed run destroying reputation, or like JK, like we just can't have people have nice things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's Tim Allen.
Yeah,
that's Tim Allen to me.
Yeah, I don't think I watched anything else beyond that. So that is gonna do it for this week's episode of That D+ Show. Thank you for joining me to discuss Disenchanted here, Logan. Especially fun to hear your take on having not seen the original.
Yeah.
So I'll be very curious to sit down and watch the original Enchanted with you at some point down the line.
We should do a live action Disney watch at some point in time.
Yeah,
I don't know how much fun it'll be, but we should do it at some point in time.
Yeah, I've got like a list of like, you know, a whole bunch that we haven't done.
Yeah.
There's easily enough to do like a full month, if not 2, of just the live action things.
Right.
I mean, at like live action in quotes, because obviously there's a live action Lion King.
I was going to say, I knew you got it.
But yeah, I mean, like going back to, you had like Cinderella. You have
Snow.
I don't know if the Snow White and the Huntsman stuff are. I don't think they're Disney. But you had
Sleeping Beauty though. Not Sleeping Beauty. What's her face? Beauty and the Beast. Because that's Emma Watson in it.
Beauty and the Beast. Yeah. Aladdin. Like Dumbo was one that came out that everybody forgets about.
Dumbo is one of the saddest Disney movies, I think. Dumbo is so sad to me, that whole movie.
Yeah.
It's a bummer.
And then the live action Dumbo was a Tim Burton joint. So, Alice in Wonderland, that's another live. There are the live action
movie.
Alice in Wonderlands. So
movies.
yeah, there's like we could do a summer of live action Disney probably at some point,
Right.
if we really wanted to go down that rabbit.
And then
hole.
actually watch the animated ones, get a nice
Yeah,
a nice reward for ourselves to treat ourselves. As
that's
the
the thing I think I would be more inclined to do would be like, let's watch the animated one and then let's watch the live action one and like compare and contrast. So maybe instead of doing like a dedicated month of that, we just do kind of like we pop in like a 2-week runs of, we're gonna do the live action or the animated, then we're gonna do the live action. And then there's also like I haven't seen Maleficent or Cruella. Some of those
I haven't seen Cruella for sure.
Yeah,
It's supposed to be like all right. I heard very wildly mixed things about it.
yeah. There's The Lady and the Tramp, that was one of the like original Disney Plus movies.
Oh God, I don't even know that existed.
Lady and the Tramp, yeah. Yeah. I mean, so many of them are just like straight rips of the original stuff. It's like, how do you even get like a new writing credit for that? Like I remember like Guy Ritchie getting a writing credit for the Aladdin movie. I'm like, 95% of this is just the original Aladdin. How did you get a writing credit for this? But whatever. Anyway, well, thank you for joining me to talk about Disenchanted here. You can follow Logan at Lefty Logie or Lefty Logie, Logggy. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Logan?
Yo, shout out to Trevor Starkey playing Skyrim every Tuesday and Thursday over at that new site on YouTube. It's great. You should go check it out. We love it. We love our Let's Play King, so go do it.
I'm almost done with the College of Winterhold quests now. The mage
that
guild
means stuff to people.
Yeah. I mean, like in I think it's like 21 episodes, 20 episodes now are out for it, and then I definitely have like them scheduled through the rest of the month. And then I actually will need to like start recording more because I recorded most of those like a month and a half ago in anticipation of the move and all that stuff. But yes, yeah. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. In addition to that, I will also give a shout out to That Nerdy Site Show. This last week's episode, Cam and I went and saw Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, so you can hear our spoiler-free and spoiler-filled thoughts on that. And then Logan and I just recorded, or just didn't record, a good half-hour conversation about it before we started recording this. And I'm sure that will be a That D Plus show eventually as well.
For sure, yeah.
You can follow all of the latest from us over at That Nerdy Site for as long as Twitter's on, I guess. We're still over there, but then even if that dies, we're still thatnerdysite.com, of course. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please like, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other. Class dismissed.